But anyways, let's get to the meat of the show.
Like we said, international news, and what that really means is Palestine updates.
For the most part, because that's what's really
well,
going
actually,
on
I guess these are Iranian updates because the first kind of half of this show we're going to talk about today is just this ongoing beef between Iran and occupied Palestine, Israel. So on Tuesday, Israel bombed Beirut. 5 civilians were killed, including 1 woman and 2 children, and it's now been, I think, widely reported that the Hezbollah leader, Faoud Shakur.
Yeah, but that's pretty.
I think I got close enough. Yeah. He was dead as well. So that's a pretty big blow to Hezbollah. Their kind of top commander is killed with this. I believe it was an airstrike in Beirut. You good? No. So then on yesterday, Israel. This is unrelated, actually. This is not a retaliation. I think the news kind of like framed this as retaliation or as just like another attack. But Israel assassinated the Hamas's top leader. Oh, we don't have his name.
Ismail Haniyeh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say it one more time.
Ismail Haniyeh.
Yeah. So Israel assassinates Ismail Haniyeh. The Hamas's. I think it's his top.
He's considered like a political leader.
Yeah, he was like their political division leader. He's like, not like a military commander. He's more like their.
He's like a negotiations kind of guy,
like a PR kind of guy.
Yeah,
I think he was one of the ones that was having a larger deal in the ceasefire negotiations. Like he was kind of more of like almost like a diplomat more than anything.
Correct. He was based in Doha at the time.
Yeah.
But so if we're looking at it. From a strategic point, like why Israel would do something like this is because this guy was at the forefront of creating a peace deal.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you assassinate your guy that's doing the peace deal, they have to like regroup and find somebody else to like renegotiate, basically.
Sure. Yeah. And there was a lot of reports came out initially that he was bombed, like airstriked. He was at a guest house, I think in like. It's he was in
Tehran.
He was in Tehran. It was in like a guest house basically. He was a guest in Tehran. He was there to I think it was the inauguration ceremony for the new Iranian president is when he was there. But it was actually later determined that it wasn't an airstrike. It was a bomb had been planted in that guest house like months prior. I think up to 2 months prior to this, and that it was a remote detonated bomb. And they were just waiting for him to show back up to his this was like his second home in Tehran. He's a Palestinian and he has like a second home in Tehran. And then when he finally showed up, they detonated the bomb and killed him.
This is very important, this distinction, whether it was an airstrike or whether it was a bomb that was planted in the guest house. One, because that means there was a physical presence of a Israeli character in Iran.
Like an Israeli agent, like state agent, was in Iran. Someone had to plant the bomb.
Somebody had to go infiltrate into Iran, right, to plant this. And he had to go buy the cards. He had to get around the entire royal guard, the Revolutionary Guard, of Iran. And he had to she had to physically plant it. So that is, on an international scale, that is a lot more threatening.
It's a lot more serious
than just an airstrike.
Just an airstrike, yeah. I mean, that involves like covert espionage acts, foreign agents operating within your government, getting through your security. There's a lot more than just a drone airstrike, right? So there's a lot more. It's not like a drone strike isn't premeditated, but there just feels like there's a lot more premeditation and a lot more like intention with a planted assassin's
physical
bomb.
Body go into the country.
It's a much more violation, and so. Here's a quote from CNN. Also, a quick aside, we had a question once about like being a little more transparent with our sources. And for the record, everything we say on this podcast, we do find like either at least like 2 sources for. We're not really big on like speculation and supposition. If we talk about it, it's pretty much been like,
if we're gonna state something as fact, it's gonna come from a credited source.
Yeah, it's gonna come from a credited source. And I mean, like credited source, you know, you may have your own opinions on like news outlets like CNN or whatever, but I mean, like we use Al Jazeera a lot. We use CNN. We use the AP. We use Reuters. And we use whatever, as long as we can find a couple different reports of it. And so, for instance, we double check and we cross reference these things. Like, we know that the original report said that this assassination was from an airstrike. Well, we now know that was incorrect, and it's actually from a bomb, because I read like 7 articles about the same story. And that's usually what I'll do. If we tackle a story, I'll go through and I'll Google it, and I'll read every article I can find about it. I take notes on it, and I look for those discrepancies, and I kind of try to find, well, this one's saying airstrike, this one's saying bomb, which one is it? And then, that's,
you look at the dates.
How did it
change?
Like, I think I read a CNN article, and it said only three civilians had been killed, including or 3 civilians have been killed and Fouad Shakur in the Beirut bombing. But then I read another article, and it says 5 civilians. So it's like, these things get updated. So anyway, we'll do better about naming our sources, but just know that if we forget to, you can always ask us, A, or B, just know that I take like hours ahead of each episode to kind of like vet these stories and just double check that our facts are wrong. And sometimes we get facts wrong just if we misspeak, or if we go off of information that is widely recognized. Like, if we had reported a couple days ago, we would have said it was an airstrike, but now we know that it's not. So just bear with us.
Yeah. So we're taking also information, bear with us that we're taking information that we're finding at that moment right before the podcast to make sure we have the most up to date. By the time you hear it 4 days later, 3 days later, it might not be 100% accurate. And we will, we'll let you know in the next episode if something changed.
Yep. Anyway, this is from CNN for what it's worth. This is all quote from CNN. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Wednesday, quote, "You killed our dear guest in our house and now have paved the way for your harsh punishment," end quote. And this has been said as a blow to Hamas. Khamenei's death is both strategically and symbolically a dramatic blow to Hamas, eliminating the most public figure who headed up the group's political operations while living overseas. The only reason I wanted to quote that piece from CNN specifically is because this, as Kanan just kind of alluded to, this is a different beast altogether than just another airstrike. This is like covert operations on foreign soil. So now Iran is actually pissed, and they've kind of said, the quote from the leader, the religious leader in Iran was, "You have paved the way for your harsh punishment." So I don't know. We'll see kind of what retaliation. I mean, and out of the time of recording, 6:50 on Thursday, August 1st, Hezbollah has just fired a rocket barrage into Israel territory about like an hour and a half ago, as of time of recording.
Yeah.
So there already are retaliations. Now, of that rocket barrage, only 5 missiles are reported to have like gotten through into Israeli territory. And of those 5, there's been no. I think they just kind of hit in like the middle of nowhere. Like there's no damage or injuries to speak of.
And I mean, you really can't hate on the the Hezbollah group for doing this. You can't hate on Iran for trying to retaliate. Imagine if somebody bombed Tel Aviv, like a drastic bombing. That's what they did to Beirut. They killed Israeli citizens. Imagine that an Irani, individual went into Israel, planted a bomb for the American diplomat that is in Israel, and killed him or her. So it's like, you would be infuriated too, but you can't be twisting this to Iran is about to, now they're going to say, Iran attacks Israel without
every
provocation.
That's what every headline was for today. Like, unprovoked attack from Hezbollah. And it's just like, dude, my brother in Christ.
Who are you lying to?
There have been 2 attacks on Iran this week. Well, 1, I guess, but it's just, and also it's all a little surprising too that Iran has been this kind of like docile about it, for lack of a better term. Like they've been bombed multiple times. This is now not their only assassination. Remember, the 2 Iranian officials in Syria were assassinated last month, or maybe it was late June, whenever they were. So like Israel has targeted Iran both in and out of Iran. They've killed Iranian officials in Syria. They've now killed Hezbollah commander in Beirut. And then now attacks on foreign nationals within their border too. Like, I mean, imagine if we were hosting, like, I don't know, a Chinese diplomat or something. Yeah. And like, this is a random example, but like if Russia assassinated a Chinese diplomat while in America, like that would be a bad look on us, right? Yeah. So a foreign national, a Palestinian, was murdered in Iranian soil. like, what's Iran going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like, well, and that's kind of yet to be seen. What they're going to be seeing.
What Iran is doing is the intelligent approach. It's the mature approach because they're not trying to start an all-out world war.
Yeah.
And Iran is just poking the bear. Not Iran, but sorry, Israel is just poking the bear, poking the bear, poking the bear. And it's just one of these days, it's like eventually they have to actually retaliate.
Yeah.
And then Israel's going to cry wolf.
Well, they already have. Israel just released a statement saying that if Iran does anything like kind of unprovoked, then they will...
unprovoked.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't use the word unprovoked, but that was kind of the implication. I'll pull up the exact quote, but Israel just came out and said that if Iran tries anything, then it'll be a full-scale war. Like right now, we're not at war. But if you wanna go that route, we will like go into a full scale war mode, is what Israel just said to Iran, which is like fucking once again. I mean, Israel is the king of gaslighting, but this is just gaslighting the highest order again. Of like, we'll bomb you repeatedly, kill your people in Lebanon. Now that was I misspoke a minute ago. I said Iran's been struck twice. It was Beirut and then Tehran, Beirut, Lebanon, Tehran, Iran.
Damascus.
Well, what? No.
They struck in Damascus.
Oh, they did strike in Damascus. That was in the...
That was a while ago,
so they've struck in Syria, Lebanon, Iran, and then now a Hamas official killed in Iran. So it's just, how many more blows can you take before you... Like,
how many more countries do you have to bomb until you're not the perpetrator?
Yeah. And like this is all very reminiscent of like, that war, was it the 7 Days War, 6 Days War, or whatever, where like all of these Arab countries, a lot of these countries included, but also like Iran and Lebanon aren't really, as far as I understand, not super close militarily. And this leads to a bigger question. I was kind of thinking about this earlier today on my commute home. I was like, these are the conditions, and I'm not like a global geopolitical like strategist, but like these seem to be the conditions of something that could spark a world war. Because if you have if you have Iran and Israel kind of moving into this posturing between like a full-scale war, they've kind of been taking shots at each other. It's only going to take one group of civilians being killed, the right politician to say the right thing at once. Whatever the catalyst is, there's going to be some straw that breaks the camel's back, which does lead these to full-scale war. And then I was thinking, well, who would come to their aid, right? If we are thinking in terms of like global war, who's ally? So for the Israel, it's obviously a lot of the Western powers, notably America, France, England, whatever. And then I was thinking, well, who would come and back up Iran? Russia. And then that was immediately it's Russia. And now you have Russia as a proxy on Iran's side, and you have America as a proxy on Israel's side, and then you have a few of the Arab countries getting in the mix, if Lebanon and Syria kind of decide to kind of throw down a little bit, and then, I don't know, China maybe supplying arms to Iran or whatever, right? And then America declares war on China because
Yemen is involved too.
Yeah, Yemen's going to get in there a little bit. So like you got Houthi brigades, and I don't know. I was like thinking like, how can this spiral? Like worst case scenario, what is the worst possible outcome? What is the worst case scenario of all of these countries kind of posturing and having this kind of dick measuring contest?
Iran does an actual, well, I wouldn't say a full-on invasion, but like a full-on actual military strike, where like the Iron Dome doesn't make a difference at this point.
Like a coordinated heavy like artillery barrage or something. Yeah.
With Iran's military being in like
not
Golan
Hezbollah,
Heights,
but like
like in Golan Heights, in Syria, in the edge of Iraq, and like literally like full on bombarding them.
Yeah,
and then Israel declares war, attacks them. America comes in, and then Russia comes in to fight. And that's a world war right there. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, so like we kind of like, I don't know. These things don't feel, or they're never something until there's something, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't know the day before Pearl Harbor, December 6th was just any other Saturday. Whenever Franz Ferdinand was shot, Gavrilo Princip, the day before he shot him, I don't know what day that was. Whatever. The day before was just another day. Like, right? You don't know these things are happening until they're happening. So all it takes is one little thing. And if you study history long enough, you notice that like you'll kind of notice the pattern of these huge events. If you start drilling down, and obviously that's like kind of reductionist to say that the assassination of Franz Ferdinand caused World War I. That's what you're taught in like middle school, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. There's like,
it's a 10-minute drive from my hometown, from my house.
Oh, in Sarajevo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a footprint where he stood when he shot the fucker.
When he just capped him and his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so that I mean, like, it's a little like simplistic to say that that's the reason for World War I, but I mean, we can just be simplistic for the sake of this argument of like these things for America's involvement in World War in World War II, Europe's involvement in World War I. These kind of global conflicts are all started by kind of minor things, wasn't it? I mean, it was John Brown killed like 3 guys in Kansas, and that sparked the American Civil War. What was it? George Washington like killed a couple French at a fort, and that sparked the 7 year. Or no, that sparked the American involvement in the French and Indian War, which is part of the 7 Years' War. That I'm not a huge expert on the 7 Years' War, so let me retract that one because I'm not actually sure how that started in England or in Europe rather. I'll have to dig into that. My point is that these things are they don't feel monumental until you're looking back on it with hindsight. And I know that's not some huge like novel take, but I'm just saying like these are the things, if you study history long enough, it's like you start to notice these patterns, and this is one of those moments where like if something were to just happen, that's it. It's now happened. And then now 5 years from now, we're looking back on this global war and we're like, oh, these are the events that unfolded. You have these system of alliances, you have Russia backing Iran, America refusing to not support Israel, right? Because it'd be very easy for America just to say, if Israel invaded Iran, or say Iran invaded Israel and then Israel struck back in Iran, it would be very easy for President Harris or President Trump to just say, that's an Israeli problem. We're not going to be involved with that, right? Like we're not going to send troops to that, but it would be very easy and very expected of them to say, we will send troops. The United Nations will get involved. NATO will, defend against Russia and aggression.
If they call on NATO to do something like that.
Well, if Russia got involved, that would be the perfect example, right? That would be.
But like Turkey is not a fan of Israel at all.
Yeah.
So they would not, and then that might break alliances. They might literally switch alliances last second. Yeah. And so it's complex, but
it's all speculation.
It really just takes one spontaneous moment and provocation, like what Israel is doing right now. And that's why I keep saying they keep poking the bear. You might poke the bear, and they might the bear might ignore you a few times. But on the 5th poke, the bear is just gonna tear you up, right? Yeah. And that's the problem. It's like if Iran really strikes back, like listen, Iran is a powerful nation. They've got like 90 million people, modern technology, modern warfare. I don't care what Israel has. Like they're not going to be able to. You were able to sustain in a 7 days war against Jordan, and Lebanon, and these countries were
10 years after they got their independence from British occupied.
They're just newly formed. They don't have proper military. Iran is a whole different. If you try to invade Iran, it would be like 50 times Afghanistan because the Zagros Mountains are not operable. You cannot take tanks through there. You cannot. It would be a forever war. It would be useless and. If you were to end that war, it would end up with a nuclear bomb, right? And so this, like, really,
we haven't even discussed like the nuclear side of that conversation. Yeah. This is all talking about conventional. Yeah. If these were to unfold as like kind of conventional warfare,
do we really want to go to that point? It's just like quit provocating, quit bombing random countries, quit. Just okay. If a Hamas leader is in Iran, don't bomb Iran. Like, are you insane? Yeah. And it kind of comes to the point where like maybe this is what they want.
I mean, it seems war. Like they're or either. They do want it or they don't care if it happens. It's a kind of a win-win for them, right?
Yeah. Like, have you seen the Greater Israel map? Like what they want?
No.
It's like from Kuwait, from Babylonia. Most of Iraq, Syria, the Sinai Peninsula, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. All of
so just all of the Middle East, basically.
Pretty much all of the Middle East.
So what about Afghanistan and like Iraq?
No, they don't want to go. They don't
want that far.
They don't want to go past like Euphrates and Tigris, the Tigris rivers.
Right.
But they also don't want to go past like the desert into Saudi Arabia. So it's like this box of the Middle East, like the Sykes-Picot Agreement, basically. Yeah. What that was, they want all of that to be Israel,
just all their land,
the Greater Israel, and these are the nationalists that are leading right now.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna talk about the Likud party here in a minute, and just like the fucking zany shit they get up to. Heinous stuff. But before we move on, I just want to quote another. This is from. I gotta cite my sources now. This is from. Is this another? Oh, this is from that. I think this is from not the same CNN article, but a different article on that CNN coverage.
This is from CNN.
It's from CNN. Israel's representative speaking at the UN Security Council, Jonathan Miller, urged the United Nations to, quote, hold the Islamic Republic accountable for its crimes, end quote, related to its support of groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. Miller called Iran, quote, the very engine driving the machinery of death and destruction that threatens us all, end quote. Those who now quoting Miller, those who rarely seek stability in the region should work on the removal of arch terrorists, not call on both sides to restrain themselves, Miller said. Israel has neither confirmed nor denied being behind the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. Oh, I guess I did have his name here. Anyway, so this is the Israeli representative to the UN. This is the pot calling the kettle black. The Israeli UN representative saying that Iran is the engine driving the machinery of death and destruction that threatens us all. An Israeli.
Yeah, this is the most ironic, the most oxymoronic thing I've ever heard in my life. Like the country that just bombed multiple other countries and is provocating a world war,
including murdering women and children. Like, let's not forget that Beirut bombing that killed the Hezbollah leader also killed 5 civilians, including 2 children and a woman. Just today, this afternoon, 15 Palestinians were killed because Israel just bombed a school which was being used as a shelter. These are not Hamas. They just bombed a shelter. They're just bombing refugee camps, and this is not news. We've reported on every time that Israel has just bombed refugee camps, bombed shelters, bombed schools, bombed hospitals. I think there are no working hospitals in Palestine left, or in Gaza. Excuse me, Gaza left. It's just and then to have the audacity to turn around and say that any other country, a country that is basically minding its own business apart from Hezbollah, is the engine of death and destruction.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, if calling the machinery of death and destruction, how much death has been caused by Iran, right? And maybe what they'll
the Iranian Revolution of 72, whatever, maybe 50 years ago. Yeah,
how many people actually died in that realistically?
Yeah,
right.
I don't know.
And it says like the machinery, death, and destruction, and then we look like, dude, look at Gaza. You're literally like genociding people.
Just Google photos of before. Just Google quote before and after Gaza.
And just like what the worst that Iran has done is like supply weapons to Hezbollah to defend themselves, or to Yemen to basically defend themselves.
Yeah.
I genuinely just don't understand what they're trying to get to here.
Yeah, it's just insane.
Should we show the video that we?
Yeah. Before we get too far away, let's talk about this video. And so this is a video we found from so this is a video from Business Standard. I believe it's an Indian production.
Yes.
But I will say that I think this was an earlier reporting from a few days ago, or no, it's from yesterday, and they do mention
12 hours ago.
Yeah, they do mention in this video that it was an airstrike. So I just wanted to call that out. They do mistakenly call it an airstrike. It has since been learned that it was that bomb, like we talked about.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has ordered a direct attack on Israel, as reported by the New York Times. This shocking move comes after the killing of top Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in an airstrike in Tehran, Iran. In the wake of Haniyeh's death, Iran's Supreme National Security Council held an emergency meeting. During this high-stakes gathering, officials say Khamenei gave the green light for a direct attack on Israel. This isn't the first time tensions have flared. A similar emergency meeting was called after an Israeli airstrike in Syria killed 2 top Iranian military commanders.
That's what we just mentioned.
Both Iran and Hamas are pointing fingers at Israel for Haniyeh's death, which occurred while he was in Tehran for the swearing-in of Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Israel has remained tight-lipped, neither confirming nor denying the allegations. However, earlier in the Gaza conflict, Israel had promised to eliminate Ismail Haniyeh and other Hamas leaders following the group's October 7 attack on Israel. Israel's Channel 12 has reported that diplomatic back channels have been used to send a stern warning to Iran. The message: Israel is ready to escalate to full-scale war if Iran or its allies attack. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, without directly addressing the assassination, has made it clear Israel will exact a very heavy price for any aggression against us on any front.
Yeah. So they say, after we attack you, any aggression will exact a heavy price. Like what? Like what kind of logic is that?
It's almost like here's a great idea. You have brother or sister, 2 brothers. The younger brother comes up, punches the older brother, and then is like, "Oh, if you hit me back, I'll tell mom."
Yeah,
but
that's a pretty good analogy, pretty apt. Analogy.
I like, and then it's like, but then he's the older brother, whoever punches back, and he's seen as the aggressor. but in reality, it's just like he's gaslighting. Like,
yeah, 100%. I mean, that's just what it is. It's just, and Israel is not new to this. This is what they've done, kind of consistently throughout the last few months in particular, but then the last 70 years in general. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. Anything you add about the Iran-Israel kind of tensions before we move on to our next the rape story, for lack of a better term?
No, not really. I would just say I don't condemn, nor do I blame it on if they strongly retaliate. And if a world war starts from it, I don't blame it on.
Yeah, I'm not like some like accelerationist when it comes to like global conflict,
No.
but I mean, you can't say that Israel has a right to defend itself and then say Iran doesn't, right? So I would say in this circumstance, Iran has a right to defend itself, especially against an incredibly like volatile, like wild card in the region, right? Like we always talk about North Korea as like this wild card that we never knew what the Kims are going to do next. So like they could just nuke their neighbors one day or whatever. And it's like they have never once fired a bullet in anyone. Israel has bombed 5 countries in the last 7 months, right? So like you can't call North Korea some rogue state.
Yeah.
If you're an Iranian or a Lebanese or Jordanian or Palestinian living in the proximity of Israel, your life is in danger from this rogue, wild, mad dog Israel that just bombs Beirut, Tehran, fucking Damascus, willy-nilly. And so I don't know, it's more of the hypocrisy. And I don't know why I brought North Korea into it, except to say that that's usually like this example of this rogue nation. We use that phrase rogue nation of like,
yeah.
And for what it's worth, we call Iran a rogue nation sometimes too. It's like this terrorist state, this Islamic Sharia law, like crackdown, no freedom, like we use words to describe Iran like we used to describe the DPRK, North Korea, but
and then turn around in Saudi Arabia, women can't even like properly
but our
drive.
allies Israel and Saudi Arabia are much worse, and we say nothing. So I don't know, that my point got away from me there, but
yeah,
you get it.
And we're not calling it on perfect at the end of the day. All we're saying is like you have to respect their diplomatic status in this world. You have to respect their boundaries, their borders. You cannot put blame on a country that's been provoked 15 times, and then once they finally bite back, they're the reason for all this to happen.
Yeah,
it's a bunch of bullshit, and it needs to stop before we end up in a full-on scale world war.